Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Spot On Spotlight. I'm Ian Murray, the president of Spot On Productions, where we help create bespoke video that inspires our customers' audience to action. I'm really excited about today's guest. I've known her for a number of years. I first met her sitting in on one of her pricing workshops, and I think the work that she does is incredibly important in business, and I'm excited to dig into some of those topics a little bit more with you today. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Casey Brown with Boost Pricing. Casey, thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm so happy to be with you today, Ian. Thanks for the invitation.
So, Casey, tell me a little bit about how Boost Pricing started and what got you into this industry.
It was not a very straight line, as you might imagine. It's not like I was a little girl dreaming of growing up to be a pricing expert, a pricing consultant. But I'm an engineer by training and started my career in factories and labs and doing R&D and manufacturing. But I loved people, and I'm an extrovert, and I love to talk. And so I saw the commercial side of the business where folks were, I had friends on the sales team that were going to Vegas each year for the national sales meeting. And to 22-year-old Casey, that looked like the height of sophistication and glamour. And I was like, I want to learn about sales. I want to learn about customers and marketing and all that kind of stuff. And I was at GE at the time and entered a rotational program called Six Sigma, which plenty of people have heard of. But at GE, that was a rotational program. So I did rotations in sales and marketing, and then I did a rotation at pricing, and just fell in love with the field, the discipline. I always describe it as an intersection of data and psychology, of people and process, of art and science. So I started inside corporate America, being a pricing, first an analyst, and then a manager, and then a director, but basically helping to support pricing decision making and execution inside large corporations. And then a little over 15 years ago, hung out my shingle and started Boost, really initially with the idea of bringing a lot of that analytical firepower to the mid-market. A lot of the statistical and analytical things I had learned about good pricing execution, things like elasticity calculations and segmentation analysis and all that kind of stuff, to the mid-market. But pretty quickly discovered better analysis was not the obstacle to better profitability vis-a-vis pricing in the mid-market. I don't even think it is, frankly, in those corporations, but certainly I got down market with smaller and medium-sized privately held companies with sales teams. Realized the answers weren't in spreadsheets; it was with the people, and that's where we've made our modern turn. I want to say modern, like after the first couple of years, frankly, really honed our focus towards the sales team. And that's where we're focused now, where we train sales teams to win deals at higher prices.
That's amazing. And I think one of the things that's really important to mention is this is pricing. The way you approach pricing is not the gouging, unethical. This is how to help businesses be more successful and really get paid the value that they're worth.
Yeah, I think it's folks that have maybe some discomfort emotionally with the idea of what sales is. Like, some folks have a kind of a dirty or manipulative, like when you say salesperson, they think, bad thoughts. I believe sales is a super honorable profession when done well, and it's done well all the time, every day, by millions of salespeople. Really, selling is making good information available to people so they can make a prudent choice. And when it comes to pricing, I deeply, deeply believe that if you're excellent at what you do, you got to be paid like you're excellent, not like you're good, certainly not like you're mediocre. And too many companies are accepting mediocre pay for excellent work, and it's because the customers can be a bully, and we can, on the selling side of the table, be afraid, and we get in our head, we get in our gut, we feel pushy, we feel salesy, we feel weird, whatever happens, and we're not paid fairly. And so, to me, this work is not about, just as you said, not about greed, not about gouging, not about taking advantage of anyone, not about getting someone to do something counter to their interest. It's about helping them get what they want and making sure that the margins that we receive in return are fair for that value.
And I think that's a great point. It's really the salesperson's job is to maximize the value both for the company that they work for and for the customer that they're serving, because there is an exchange of value taking place there, and it's that salesperson's role to make sure that everybody is winning at the end of that conversation. So
100%.
you talk about pricing for you being mission-driven work. What makes that more than just a business discipline? It's something that I know you're very deeply passionate about.
Yeah, it is. Thank you for asking that. Yeah, for me, I describe pricing as mission driven work because to me this is rooted in injustice, and it's kind of calls back to something I said a moment ago, which is if you're excellent, you got to be paid like you're excellent. And if you're not, if you're accepting less than you're worth, then somebody's else's bank account has money in it that I believe belongs to you. It's your money based in your quality, your service, your excellence, your commitment to value, your commitment to world class customer experiences and outcomes. And when you don't have money that you've already rightfully earned through your quality and service and excellence, then that robs you of resources that you could use to innovate, grow, add new lines of business, hire more people, pay yourselves and your people better. Now, when we're talking about, how people are paid, we're talking about families and communities impacted here. So there's a huge ripple effect of the work. It's not just about dollars and cents. It's about staring in the eyes of men and women every day who pour their hearts out for quality and service and excellence and seeing that go under rewarded. And knowing that when the work that we do at Boost is successful in a company, now they're able to pay a profit sharing, bonus for the first time in 3 years. And now somebody's making an extra house payment or they're, making their daughter's college tuition payment. I mean, it's real human beings' lives are really affected when we stand up and square our shoulders and ask for what we're worth versus tucking our tail and turning and accepting less than we're worth. And so that's why this is as mission driven work, because it's rooted in the justice of being paid fairly versus the the injustice of being underpaid.
Yeah. I love that, and that's so true. I mean, especially being in a small business, every piece of profit. It's not an evil word, but you're able to provide other things. You're able to help pay for healthcare for employees, and there's a lot of good that happens within a business when you're able to maximize some of those margins for the work that you do.
100%. Yes. And there's more opportunities. You're better equipped to survive into the future, gives a better career path for your team. There's just this is to me a virtuous cycle. Profit is a means through which small and medium-sized businesses help. I mean, we, private sector, small, medium-sized privately held companies, we employ half this country, right? So profit isn't the dirty word. We wouldn't have the ability to provide opportunity for ourselves and for our employees and for their families and communities if we weren't profitable. So we have to tend those home fires, keep some dry powder.
Yeah, and the title of this episode is really about fearless pricing. I forgot to mention that at the beginning. You are also an author besides a speaker, and I was super excited when I saw this book come out talking about fearless pricing. But it really is not being afraid to ask what you're worth.
Thank you for the shout out on the book. I got to give you a shout out. I know I've shared this with you before, but for anybody listening in, Ian is a contributor to this book in the fashion that, like, probably at least once a year for, I would say, 5 years, he said, "Hey, when are you going to write a book? Hey, when are you going to put this in a book? Hey, you going to write a book soon?" And so that and others gentle and sometimes insistent encouragement has led to the book coming out a little over a year ago. And yeah, it's called Fearless Pricing because, as you said, this is less about mechanics or tactics. It's much more about confidence, about hidden underlying obstacles to success, things like emotions, habits, attitudes, fears, self-limiting beliefs, dealing with those things that trip us up on the road to higher profits through better pricing.
Yeah, there's a lot of head game and psychology that plays into this on both
100%.
sides of this. One of the most powerful ideas is that many companies, and you just mentioned this at the beginning, are accepting mediocre pay for excellent work. Why do you think so many strong businesses undervalue themselves even when they know that they deliver real results for customers?
Oh gosh, the list of reasons is long. I'll try to cap my answer at a relatively short, maybe a minute or two. But I think one key reason is we get asymmetrical feedback from our customers, and here's what I mean. Even when your customers think, "Oh my gosh, that price is super competitive," or "I've got a lot of other quotes that are higher," or "For all this value, I'm really surprised at this low price," they're going to tell you that. At the very best, you're going to get, "Okay, sounds good, Ian. When can you start?" That's the most you're going to get. On the other hand, when your price is too high, you certainly hear all that. Sometimes, and this depends on the kind of the nature of your customer, sometimes they think, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it's this cheap." And they still say, "This is too expensive. Is this your best number? Can you sharpen your pencil?" So we are getting asymmetrical and sometimes false feedback that our prices are too high. And that is mostly all we get. even when that's not always true. And we know that because you've won business when you weren't the cheapest. I've won. Everybody listening knows that this isn't the whole story, but we get that asymmetrical feedback. You pair that asymmetrical feedback with something from brain science and psychology called the negativity bias, which is where we retain and recall negative events with greater frequency and intensity than positive events. So you can win 20 deals without a word and then lose one over price. And you're like, oh my gosh, I wonder if our prices are too high, right? It's our human nature to latch on to losses and negative feedback greater than wins and positive feedback. So you get asymmetrical feedback, you pair that with negativity bias. We start to believe the hype, right? I've compared in podcasts and in the book and on the keynote, I talk about pricing a little bit like poker. That you're looking at your hand, guessing at the strength of your competitor's hand. Everybody's bluffing, right? Buyers are trying to hide how much they're willing to pay. Sellers are trying to hide how little they're willing to accept. And I think that that all that asymmetrical feedback paired with a negativity bias makes us really susceptible to the bluff. That the buyer has a stronger hand to play. I will say one more thing about, so that's kind of one big answer that has a couple of small answers inside it, but there's one I want to tack on. And I think this is really common for founder-led businesses. And you are a founder-led business and we are a founder-led business. And we know the days when we were, barely making any money, or when we had to write a check into the business to cover payroll, or, I think founders have kind of, trauma in their history that makes them terrified to lose any deals. Even once our business has grown past the point of having to be so terrified of losing deals, we sometimes have it's just like almost like a hangover from the early days when things were really tough. And that can make us too precious with each deal. And the willingness to lose some deals over price is an important step in the path to greater profitability. So I think that's a second key reason why. I'll mention one more because I can't help myself, and then I promise I'm going to shut up. One other is that, and this is ironically a problem that affects best in class and better in class businesses more than the mid-level kind of, or the bottom feeding competitors in a market. Best in class companies tend to be super duper focused on volume and growth and winning new deals, and hyper focused on excellence in delivery. Hyper focused on excellence in delivery, much more than their less effective competition, by the way. But that focus means we're on a hamster wheel of sell, deliver, sell, deliver, sell, deliver, sell, deliver. And both of those things are a full-time job. So we already have two full-time jobs. So the thing that sometimes gets squeezed and pushed out the side is we are not slowing down enough to make sure we're being paid well for it. We have a lot of focus on sales, a lot of focus on operations, not as much focus on the pricing piece of this.
And I've heard you make this point, humans want to hold on to their gold. So everybody's trying to get everything for less money. They may walk into a conversation ready to spend $40,000. You came in at $38,000, but they're trying to beat you down to $32,000, fully
That's
expecting they could go up to that $40,000 mark. So, everybody wants to hold on to that gold because it's human nature, and everybody wants more for less.
I think the key takeaway from that, you're absolutely right, is that we when this happens, when somebody says, well, you do it for 32, maybe they walked in ready to pay 40 grand. They've already saved $2,000 before you even open your mouth. But they're still going to try, because why not? Can't hurt to ask, right? The key to that is that we have to understand that there's a difference between tactic and reality. Like, there is a difference between a tactic to try to get us to discount and a true volume threat where we're going to lose the business if we don't do that. Customers, this is part of that bluff, right? This is back to that poker analogy, right? They're trying to pretend like, if you don't do it for 32, I'm out of here, when the reality is they already decided to buy from you. And your job in the sales seat in that moment is to distinguish tactic from fact. And that is, there's gamesmanship. That's why I like the poker analogy too, because poker, the best poker players in the world aren't dealt any better cards than anyone else. They're just better at playing the game. And there's a lot in pricing that's a lot like this. It's not just about the cards you're dealt, which is the quality of your products and services and how they match up with customer needs. It's also the gamesmanship of sitting in that negotiation arena and walking out with the most deals you can at the highest prices possible.
Well, you make the point too, a price match request is a love letter from your customer saying, like, I'd rather work with you. You're like, if I would have wanted the other customer or the other vendor, I would have already chosen to work with them. So It's that love letter from your customer saying, "Hey, I'd prefer to work with you, but maybe can you work with me on price?" Even though they're willing to pay your price potentially because they want to work with you.
Absolutely. I always say that price match request is an objective statement of preference from the customer. They say the words, so and so is cheaper, can you match their price? The message beneath the word is so and so is inferior to you in a way I don't want to disclose, and I hope you don't figure out. They're cheaper, you're better. I don't want them, I want you. And we don't often register that kind of pressure as a having a silver lining, because it feels bad to get beat up on price. But when they're beating us up on price in that way, it is a buying signal. They're basically saying, I'd like to buy from you. I prefer you. And there's a tactic at work. And how do we separate that tactic from reality?
Yeah, and we're very intentional too about if we are going to discount on price, we're trading value too. So, we rescope to whatever that lower price is. So we're not truly just cutting price. It's like we can bring it down to a price you can afford, but you're going to get a little bit less or a little bit different because otherwise we're just giving it away. And we've learned the pricing can be very quickly a race to the bottom if you're only competing on price. So we avoid that like the plague.
Yeah, it's always so easy to drop price. It's hard to gain it, and I'll tie that together with trust, because if you the importance of the value of what you do, we call it in Boost, we call that give to get. Essentially, if they're saying, hey, we can't afford 38, we can only afford 32, and then you say, okay, well, let's take we'll take this piece out and this piece out, and then we can still meet your budget and still give you the things that are most important to you about what we've proposed. That maintains trust, because it maintains price integrity. And I'm using integrity here not as a moral word, but more structural. Like there is, like a building has structural integrity. Pricing works the same way. If you take something out of one side of the deal without matching something on the other side of the deal, it actually sends a signal to the customer that there's no integrity here. So if I say to you, oh, I can't afford 38 and I can only afford 32, and you go, okay, I can do it for 32, then I feel like you were just fleecing me and I caught you in the act, because there was clearly always $6,000 of extra margin in there. In fact, maybe I didn't push you hard enough. So I think the importance of that matching the value with the price is also really important to maintain trust.
Very much so. So when we talk about price, you often reference it as one of the biggest financial levers in a business. What should leaders and businesses understand about the outsized profit impact, even on a small pricing improvement?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I keynote quite a bit in our trainings. We teach what we call the world's simplest P&L, where we show the impact of a small change in price on profitability. And regardless of the profitability of anybody listening to this live here, there is no greater impact on profitability than pricing. X% increase in price has a bigger impact on profitability than X% increase in sales volume or X% reduction in expenses. But in our experience, companies are very, 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 very focused on sales volume and growth and winning new deals and expanding inside existing customers, and very focused on operational efficiency, reducing waste, reducing errors, procuring smarter, far less so about being more strategic with price. And I'll offer two examples for this. One is that I will ask in our keynotes, raise your hands if you're having sales meetings regularly in your company. All the hands go up. Raise your hands if you're talking about operations regularly, where margins and cost and errors, efficiency, waste, all that kind of stuff is discussed. All the hands go up. Raise your hands if you're having regular strategic pricing reviews. And like one hand kind of goes up slowly, like I'm not sure what she means by strategic, or I'm not sure what she means by regular. So I think, and this goes back a little bit to what I said, which is we're so focused on growing and selling and serving that the thing that gets pinched is pricing. We're not, maybe it's a once a year set it and forget it situation, or for a brand new opportunity, we're trying to decide what price tag to put on this opportunity, but we're not looking at it strategically enough and kind of widening the aperture enough to say, as a business, what's happening with pricing, as an industry, what's happening with pricing, what opportunities might be hidden in our business to fix this. And as the second example of this, I will say that even though our audiences and our keynotes are largely filled with CEOs of companies that are very masterfully clear about their financials. Like if you ask them to explain their P&L, they could sit down and talk you through their income, their various expense lines that lead to the cost of goods and the gross margins and all the overhead. And they know their numbers. And yet when I put this world's simplest P&L up there with a dollar and a nickel, people are taking out their phones and taking pictures of those slides, because it's proof that it isn't just about understanding the numbers. It's about having the math of that, the outsized magnitude of the impact of price tattooed on the back of our eyelids every day, every deal, every customer, every product, every service, every time. Because I hear from business owners, business leaders, sales leaders, frontline sellers, and pricers these kind of narratives like, it's just 1 or 2%. It's just $100 on $10,000 project. It sounds like rounding error, but that could represent a 20% lift on the profitability when you get down to the net line. So really making people not just reminded of the numbers, but like, how do we lock that kind of urgency into our decision making and make sure our sales team is well trained to go execute on that, because it isn't 1 or 2%, it's 20 or 40% of our bottom line at stake.
Yeah, and you mentioned that dollar and nickel. So for every dollar, you charge, fixed cost of goods sold, all that would be 95%. It's a nickel profit at the end, correct? So if you 1% it on that dollar, you're at $1.01, and with that, so you'd be 6 cents now on bottom line, and that's 20% bump on your profitability.
Right. And if anybody's listening and they say, well, I don't have a 5% bottom line, I have a 10% bottom line. Okay, then it's only 10% volume growth or profit. Anybody what? Right. So, and then I go on in the keynote to talk about what about where we could do a 5% increase? Well, our 5 cents turn into 10. That's 100% growth. If you make a 10% bottom line, it's only 50% growth. If you make a 20% bottom line, it's only 25. There's not a single person that's listening to this live right now who has a starting point P&L where 5% doesn't change the game for you financially. And so even small changes in price make a huge difference. If you say, I can't go do 5 or 10%, where can you do 1? Or can you do a half? This is the beauty of pricing. It's a game of fractions. You don't have to take big swings. Where can you take tiny swings? And don't let, you might say, I couldn't even do a 0.5% increase with this customer or on that product or on that service. Fine, leave some of that core stuff alone. It's often in the fringes of our business where we have the biggest opportunity. So where can you get a 0.5% more or 1 or 2? Leave some of the core stuff be if that's going to be a real volume threat, but recognize that tiny, tiny changes in price can generate hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars of profitability if we're smart and surgical about it, and we have a team that's well trained to get it.
And going back to that strategic pricing that you mentioned, actually two of the things from the fringe side of your business that when we looked at it, we looked at the fringe things and we looked at those free items that, maybe we should be charging for that we don't, and how can we build that into a pricing model? And then you use this idea on fringe on this idea of hot sauce versus gasoline. And gas right now is stupid priced again. So everybody's very cognizant of the price of gas, but hot sauce, what is that item? You could tell me hot sauce is $1 a bottle or $10 a bottle, and I'd still probably buy it at the grocery store because I don't have that same reference as I do that gas is $4.85 a gallon right now at the pump, and you're like, holy cow.
Right. Yeah.
So those are huge.
When we do that work in our training programs or in our keynotes where we have people guessing, we play prices right, we have people guessing at different things. And you're right. Even when gas was $2.85, people still knew the price of it because they drive past 7 signs a day. They fill up once or twice a week. It makes a noticeable enough chunk of their household budget that if there were to be a big change, everyone would know. We know because we've just gone through one of those changes where all of a sudden it's about twice as expensive as it was a few months ago, and everybody's aware. Whereas, and we use, sometimes it's tennis balls, sometimes it's hot sauce, but we have these other examples we use where people guess at the price and they're way off. They're 2, 3, 5x high on their guesses. And why? Because hot sauce makes up 0% of your household budget or rounds to 0. And the relevance for that for anybody listening who sells products and services is that most businesses have gasoline and hot sauce in their portfolio of products and services. But they think of everything like gasoline. We feel like, oh my gosh, if we raise our prices, our customers will leave us. If we hold the line on discounts, we'll lose a bunch of sales volume. But it's far more true on the gasoline than it is the hot sauce. So that kind of rolls back to that fringes of your business thing you were talking about, which can be products and services that you sell that are a little less sensitive, that are a little more kind of a throw it in the cart and move on. It's not the center of our decision making. But to your point, it can also be things that are free today that could be monetized. And so a question we often ask our clients is, what's free today that just comes along for free when somebody buys your product or service, but potentially could have a revenue stream attached to it because it really does generate value. And we lead them in an exercise to look at what some of those things are because in my experience, and this is again, ironically, a bigger problem for the best companies is that we are so committed to excellence and so committed to service that we end up over delivering a lot, and a lot of things come along for free when we provide our product and service. And I'm for the customer winning. I'm for the customer feeling like, oh my gosh, Spot On did such an awesome job for us. I love them. I didn't even expect this and this and this that were even extra in value. But companies are doing too much of that. So it's like if the customer can win by getting 10% extra, great. Let's not give them 40% extra for free, right?
And we face that a lot because we're in this. We don't have a physical product necessarily that we deliver, so we're trying to make sure that the level of service and excellence we deliver is what we want, but is also in line with the tier of pricing that a customer is paying for. Because we can, I can deliver an excellent Honda Accord, or I can deliver an excellent BMW, or I can deliver an excellent Bentley. So there is some of that.
What really matters to you?
Serving those customers at every level of your business.
Yeah.
There's an example that unfortunately, maybe not unfortunately, but we just went through where we were pricing a project out for a customer, and one of the salespeople had this imaginary number in their mind that they're like, this is what it should be, but I think we've got to get it down to this number. And I was like, Casey Brown would tell you, do not do that. And we presented to the customer where it should be, took it back instead of trying to discount out of fear. And the client was like, that's you've shown that there's value here. We'll go with it. So I was like, imagine if we had discounted to that and left that profit on the table for this project that we're delivering for a customer. So Casey Brown comes up in the business a lot. Like, hey, Casey would tell you not to do that.
Yeah. I have some clients that say, I'm a child I was born in the 70s. And so I watched a lot of cartoons in the early 80s. And there was always those old Looney Tunes cartoons where there was like an angel and a devil on each shoulder, right? So I've had clients tell me, you're like a little, Casey Brown angel on the shoulder, like whispering in my ear, like, charge more, charge more. Yeah, I think that story you tell is very, it's super common where we see people I will tell you, and I've been in this game a long time, but almost always the customer is less price sensitive than the seller. People don't believe it because the customers are the ones that beat you up on price. But we are more price sensitive on behalf of the on behalf of the customer than the customer is. And it causes us to underprice and what I would call pre-discounting, which is what your salesperson was trying to do. They knew what the number should be based on whatever model you have that helps you calculate and project pricing for these elements or this value, whatever. And you knew that number, but in his head that was too high because he had some other number in his head based on gosh knows what, right? All kinds of things probably. And that was causing him to want to pre-discount. And then what that leads to when we do that, and you stopped it from happening, so good for you. It's fine to have those conversations internally. It just like get it all out of our head and then stand in front of the customer and have the confidence. But if we pre-discount, let's say you knock X off of it and you go into that number with that customer, they're still often likely to still push even further. So there turns into 2 rounds of discounting. It's like we shoot arrows at ourselves and then they have their shot at shooting arrows at it. So I think it's really important to uncover, and this is why we exist. I mean, our business exists to train sales teams with this because sales teams are walking around with all these fears. And I get it because again, they get asymmetrical feedback, negativity bias. They're paid and hired and promoted and incentivized and trained to win deals. And they're afraid that higher prices will cost them deals. So I understand why all those fears exist. They're just a terrible reason not to get paid for your value. So it's like, let's acknowledge the fear. Let's prepare for how to deal with this situation in this moment to get the highest price we can. And if we've got to concede price, or if they come back and say, hey, that's I really like this proposal, Ian, but there's just no way we can do it at this number. We have this much that we can spend. What can we do? You've still got that opportunity to come down later. You can, price is lost in buckets and gained in drops. You got to be very, very careful to give it away, and especially not giving it away proactively.
Yeah, it's very easy to get to a point where you're discounting, and then you're looking at a break-even project, and even instead of a profitable project. So
Some other thing that happens in those situations a lot of time, especially in project work, like you're in your business, is that you'll take I'm gonna make up numbers. Let's say you added this all up, and it's like this is going to be a $50,000 effort, and the salesperson's like, oh my gosh, no, I think they did this project with a vendor last year, same event, and it was 35, and or whatever, right? Like we have a number, like oh, okay, I think we got to do it for 40, and then sometimes we go with a like this magic red pen back to our calculations, right? And it was like, well, maybe this isn't going to take 60 hours of post production. Maybe we can do it in 40, and we can like we start like messing with our own knowledge. Like we're the experts, but we suddenly second guess our expertise and try to figure out how to fit this project into a much smaller budget, but still deliver the outcome. Now, the problem with that is that you are never going to deliver a mediocre result. You're never going to let something that's just okay go out the door. And so when you win the work at 40, the customer's like, great, but you still do $50,000 worth of value, which means that guess what? It did take the 60 hours in post, not 40, whatever, right? Like we kind of like lie to ourselves about how we're going to be able to do it in less effort and less time and with less steps somehow and still deliver the excellence. But you know what it takes to deliver excellence. And so then what happens is you're unprofitable. And you look back at a project and go, how in the world did we have such a cost overrun? Well, because you lied to yourself back when you quoted it, that you could do it that fast. And I don't know anybody in a professional services business who hasn't learned that lesson at least once. Most of us have to learn it more than once.
It's a hard lesson. It takes a few times. And usually those are the projects too, when you start discounting, that end up being even more work than if you had taken the project on at whatever the normal rate would be.
Not just that. It's often the most price sensitive customers, the ones that really beat the tar out of us on price, that are the worst customers. They're the neediest customers. They're the most demanding. They suck up disproportionate organizational resources. They don't pay us on time. They abuse our staff. Like it's very often the lowest margin projects are often the worst projects for all kinds of other reasons. And I think after we have one of those, we swear off of it, like never again. But then over time, sometimes we forget, or our sales teams forgets the pain of it, and we seduce ourselves into taking that kind of work again down the road. And I think it's just really important to have clarity from the leadership level on down through everybody who has a part in selling is what kind of work do we not want? What kind of companies are not good partners for us? Where do we not succeed and make money and delight our customers because we've squeezed ourselves into a box we can't win inside? And we've got to have real crystal clarity from you on to every single person who supports and sells for you. What is good business? What's bad business? What's good pricing? What's bad pricing? What's good project work for us? What isn't? Because if we don't know that, or if we're murky or gray about it at all, your people will close business that you'll regret.
Yeah. And I think a really good point on that is when you do those customers that beat you up on price, they end up not valuing what you're able to provide for them, which is why you run into all those issues of that. They just don't understand the value that you're able to deliver.
Absolutely. They do not connect deeply with the things that you think are most valuable about you. They're just trying to squeeze out, whatever, a cheap video project or something. They don't really understand the partnership and the value of that partnership to them. And so I'd say, sometimes, and I live in the real world, right? So sometimes you got to take that kind of work on to fill a bubble in your pipeline, or you've got to, I'm not saying never ever dip, ideally, obviously, we'd always work with our ideal client profile and they'd always give us piles of money for amazing work. That's the dream. And sometimes it's like that. And then other times it's like, there isn't a lot of project work out there. And we know this isn't great for us because of these reasons. And we know we're going to, this is just going to, this helps us fill our capacity at this moment by taking this project on. At least do it with your eyes open. Don't lie to yourselves. Don't knock down your internal budget for delivery with the belief that somehow you're magically going to do this work. Just be eyes open about the cost of it, eyes open about the implications to your business, and as quickly as possible, get back to reserving that capacity for customers that do value you and see you as a partner.
Yeah, and you and I talked before getting on the show, but talk about EOS, and one of the things we do in EOS is really understand our key differentiators, and I think that's really important when your sales team is thinking about pricing and talking through pricing. Like, what do you uniquely offer in the marketplace that's worth that price? That another, in our case, video production company, yes, can they turn a video out at the end of the day? But are you going to get the same experience, the same process, the same people
Right.
You may end up with a video at the end, but it may be a terrible process, and it may not be worth the discount that you're getting by going with somebody else. So being confident in
Absolutely.
what makes you different is huge for us as well.
Right. And the ability to connect what makes you different to what they care about. Because one of the problems that I see for a lot of sales teams is they talk a lot about what's special and valuable about us. Here's why we're better and different than those guys. And here, not that like that, not that glib, but right, like we talk about our differentiators. And the problem is nobody cares about that. They only care about that in relation to what's important to me. So because our process works this way, we can turn a video project around for you, faster with fewer revisions. I don't know, I'm making it up. I don't know what your public. By the way, I should say I've hired Spot On and had an amazing experience. And
Well, thank you.
Great video for us. That is, we still use all the time.
I still see clips of it on YouTube all the time.
What's that?
I still see clips of that video we did for you on LinkedIn and YouTube all the time.
Yeah, I'm telling you, we get a ton of mileage out of it. So I do know firsthand the value of working with Spot On, but I don't want to butcher your value prop on air because you'd be the right one to talk about it. But my point is, we've got to connect those elements to what they care about. So if they're worried that they're going to have a video that doesn't really hit the mark, how can you talk to them about how your pre-production process really understands how to make sure you get the right footage in the can? It's not just about a pretty video. It's about one that really accomplishes their business goals. Talk to them about that. If they're worried about this thing running over budget or over time, you can, share performance statistics on that from it doesn't do any good to just throw up our value prop in a vacuum. We have to understand what this customer's pain points are, what their fears are, what their headaches are, what their goals are, what their hopes are, and then tie what we're great at to those things. And the best partners and where we're going to make the most money and have the happiest clients is where what they really care about lines up really well with what we're great at. Which is not to say we should never ever do work if there's not a perfect match, but we can recognize that we are going to have a harder time being as much of a hero to that customer as we could with the perfect matches, and we're probably going to struggle to make as much money as we can with the perfect matches. So the degree to which we're clear on our differentiators, we're clear how they help customers, and we're clear helping the customer understand that, we're going to win the most deals we can at the highest prices possible and have the happiest clients.
And that just reminded me of a really great example you did when I saw you, the Hyundai cars during 2008. They didn't discount the price of their car in a tough time,
Right.
but they solved the customer concern of, well, what if I lose my job? And they had that, we'll buy your car back from you if you lose your job within
That's right.
a year or whatever. So that's a huge piece, is understanding what is important to the customer and kind of that what's in it for them.
Right. To add a little, context to that story. So at the time, this was during the 2008, financial crisis. Car manufacturers weren't selling cars at all. These, cars were just piling up on the lots. Nobody was buying. And all of these competitors of Hyundai were throwing massive discounts, rebates, promotions, incentives. We're talking $5, $6, $7, $10, $12, $15,000 off cars trying to get people to buy, and it wasn't making any difference. And then Hyundai offered a deal that if you lost your job in the 12 months following the purchase of the car, they'd take the car back. And cars flew off the lots. So it speaks to what problem are you solving? You can have, amazing cars at a cheap price, but if that's not what people really are fretting about and what's keeping them up at night, you're solving the wrong problem. So you've got to understand not only what are our differentiators, but how do they align to what this customer cares about? And why that's important and always bears repeating is what the customer cares about changes, right? We were just, before we got on, we were talking a little bit about the, economic situation and the geopolitical situation. And it's that's causing a different set of business concerns and challenges for lots of business than they faced a year ago or 2 years ago or 5 years ago, or, once COVID happened versus pre-COVID. We've got to be constantly updating our understanding of how our value levers really apply and matter to customers. Even the same customer, 1 month to the next, might care about something different. It's really important to stay connected with their needs, not just what we're good at.
Sales was easy, Casey. Everyone would do it, right?
It's the best job in the world and the worst job in the world. I don't know. I love it. I'm addicted to it, but man, it can be painful.
It can be painful at times. So besides picking up the book, Fearless Pricing, or connecting with you, how can people what's a practical first step that they can take if they've been underpricing for a long time?
Well, I mean, I kind of joke, I'm a one trick pony. Just raise your prices, raise your prices, raise your prices, right? So if the idea of raising your prices tomorrow stops your heart, then I would say, why? What are you afraid of? Have you done the math to understand what, like, what kind of impact a small change in price would have, how much volume you could afford to lose and still make more money? Like if you did make a data driven decision, not a fear driven one. If you're still just super duper freaked out, that's fine, because this is, we talked about this the whole time. This is a mental slash psychological challenge much more than it is an analytical one. The reason companies are not making more money with pricing isn't, the answer to that isn't in a spreadsheet. It's between the ears of the decision makers and the head trash and the belief system that they hold. And so if you've got to get reprogrammed a little bit on your beliefs, we have a bunch of, I write a blog a couple times a month. We have a free newsletter. Sign up on our website. I also have a ton of videos and other free resources on the website, which is at boostpricing.com. Boost like the energy drink, pricing like the best way to make money.com. And yeah, I also put a lot of content out on LinkedIn. So follow me there, connect with me there, Casey Brown Boost. Because this isn't there. I have never, ever encountered a business that doesn't have some opportunity to raise prices from where they're sitting today. Not a single one. That doesn't mean go raise all your prices on everything you sell tomorrow by 10%. It does mean there are some places in your business where you could ask for a little more than you're asking for today and get it. And both the fear and the busyness on other things stop us from slowing down to look for that. But if we can, start to take, Jim Collins wrote Good to Great, and he talks about in his book the idea of bullets before cannons. So I like this for pricing. Where can we take the least risk and put forth the least effort to get the biggest return? So where's some low hanging fruit? Where's some easy wins? Start there. Use that to build confidence to map out other areas of business where you have underpriced products or services or underpriced customers, and start to move from there.
Yeah, I like that. It's not necessarily just a broad brush stroke on everything. It's that riches in the niches. Like, what are those hot sauce small items where it makes a big difference on the bottom line?
Right. And most every company out there knows that not all their customers are created equal, in the realm of, like, you get some customers that are very difficult, that you're not making a ton of money on. They're really challenging. Start there. So great. Like, sometimes people are like, I want to fire a customer. Like, okay, I would fire a customer if they verbally abused my staff or said something, made a bigoted comment or something. Like, great. If they violate my core values, they're fired. But most times when people say I want to fire a customer, they just mean they're difficult to deal with and they're not making enough money. And I say, well, don't fire them, raise their prices. By the way, that might cause them to self-select out, in which case, good for you. They're now alumni of your organization. You're going to make more money with them gone. But very often they stick around and pay it. And now it's like, okay, well, at this price tag, I'm willing to deal with this pain in the butt customer, right? Like, it's a different situation. So yeah, it's all mindset. And the riches are in the niches. Don't start with the biggest customer you have and the highest volume products or services. What about some smaller customers, or some less profitable customers, or some products or services you have around the fringes where are a little more like the hot sauce thing, right? So start to take action. Use that to fuel your confidence and in your bottom line to take bigger steps and map out more places where you might be underpriced.
I love that. We could talk about this for another 45 minutes. I love the work you do. It is so important. Being a small business, like Casey's amazing.
Thank you.
Outside that, what's the best piece of business advice you've ever received? I love this question, just seeing like what people learn throughout their lives.
I think it's both business and personal, but it shows up a lot more in business, especially as I was late in my corporate career and early in my entrepreneurial journey, was to really, and I'm a truck driver's daughter from the wrong side of the tracks, grew up, below the poverty line, and had really struggled with imposter syndrome, and often behaved in work settings like I thought a young corporate professional should behave. And so I was playing a part, really. And I wouldn't have said it that way. I would have said, this is just how I act at work. But looking back at that, I can see that I was not very authentic. Sometimes I certainly wasn't vulnerable. I had a hard time admitting if I didn't know something, because I thought that might, of course they're going to fire me because they hired me to be an expert in this. And so and this was towards the end of my corporate career. I had a friend that really gently and then less gently over time kind of talked to me about, hey, you're really different in your personal life than you are your professional life. You show up in this really like kind of irreverent, self-deprecating, kind of funny, silly way in personal life, and at work you're really buttoned up. And like I think you could be even more effective at work if you would just be integrate this a little bit and be your real self more. And started that journey a lot at the end of my corporate career, and then leaned into it more at the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. Read a book by Patrick Lencioni called Getting Naked that talks about this sort of thing, like how to be more vulnerable and authentic and don't feel like you have to have all the answers. Even if somebody's hiring you to be the expert, it's okay not to know everything. So I think that was it was a journey for me, letting, kind of taking off the carapace of like the what this person was supposed to look like, sound like, act like, think like, dress like, and starting to be the more authentic Casey Brown, including revealing that, yeah, you always say you can take the girl out of the trailer park. You can't take the trailer park out of the girl, right? Like, it's okay that I came from a blue collar background. In fact, there's so many wonderful lessons in that have helped me so much in my life. So just stop trying to be somebody I'm not, embrace who I am, including all the foibles. One of them is I'm wildly impatient. My joke around my house is like, come on, girls, I haven't got all minute, right? Like, I am really impatient person. I work on it, but I'm slightly less impatient after years of working on it. But I think like being transparent about where I'm not, where I kind of, or make fun of myself, being a little bit self-deprecating, being like, it's okay. I think that gives other people permission to be more honest with me about themselves. And that has led to really great professional and personal relationships. And I think it's helped me be a lot more effective in my work because like none of this is about blaming or shaming people who, nobody needs to feel bad if they're leaving money on the table. I'm a champion for you. But if I showed up like some kind of, arrogant expert, I think that shuts down collaboration. It shuts down people asking for help. It shuts down how much I can be of good to them. So I'd say that's really the journey, is letting down my guard and being the real me at work in the ways that I was afraid to do when I was 22.
That's great advice. I will say you are a very fun and entertaining and engaging speaker when you're up there too. So
thank you. Nobody wants to listen to anybody read bullet points about price elasticity and segmentation analysis and price sensitivity and discount, strategy. Like it could be super boring and nobody wants to do that. I don't want to deliver a talk like that. Yeah. I got to do it over and over again. So of course I don't want to be bored. So that's why we play Price is Right. That's why we tell stories. That's why the whole talk is really about like having people realize their own pricing power in a different way. And I try to make it fun.
That's awesome. Casey, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
I loved it, Ian. Thanks so much for having me.
So if you had enjoyed today's episode of the Spot on Spotlight, tap that follow button on Spotify so you don't miss the next inspiring episode. And if something in today's episode resonated with you, share it with a friend or colleague who'd get value from it too, because great ideas are better when they're shared. Thank you for joining us on the Spot on Spotlight, shining a light on what makes business better, one story at a time. We'll see you on the next one.